рабоче-крестьянская революция, о необходимости которой все время говорили большевики, совершилась.
Vladimir Lenin, mastermind of the Russian Revolution, a young Vladimir Lenin, born Vladimir Ulyanov, stands beside his mother offering comfort as their family is consumed by grief. They have just learned that Lenin's older brother, Alexander, a university student, has been executed for his role in a plot to assassinate Tsar Alexander III. It is 1887, and this moment will alter the trajectory of Vladimir's life, leaving a deep imprint on the Ulyanov family, but it also plants the seed of the revolutionary drive that will grow into something far greater. Vladimir Lenin's story begins in the small town of Simbirsk, on the banks of the Volga River, in 1870. His family, the Ulyanovs, was one of intellect, ambition, and mixed ethnic backgrounds. The Ulyanovs' roots stretched across Russian, German, and Swedish lines, offering them a perspective that straddled different cultures and ideals. A generation before, the Ulyanovs had been lowly serfs bound to the land and the whims of landlords, but Vladimir's father, Ilya Ulyanov, broke free from this past through hard work and education. Ilya rose to become a school inspector, a position of prestige for someone from such humble beginnings. Ilya was not just an academic figure, but also a progressive thinker, encouraging free discussion at home about the political situation in Russia. These discussions, infused with liberal ideals, left a deep imprint on his children. Lenin's sister later recalled their home being alive with passionate debates, forming in Vladimir an early awareness of Russia's deep inequalities and injustices. Yet this early atmosphere of intellectual curiosity would take a dark turn. Tragedy struck the Ulyanov family twice within 2 years. First, in 1886, Lenin's father passed away suddenly, his death leaving the family reeling. But worse was to come. The following year, Lenin's beloved older brother Alexander was arrested and condemned to death for his part in a plot to assassinate the Tsar. Alexander was hanged, and the Ulyanov family, once respected, was now ostracized and marked as dangerous revolutionaries. This event was a turning point for Vladimir Lenin. At just 17 years old, he had watched the state crush his brother's dreams of reform. It was a moment of profound disillusionment for Lenin. His faith in God shattered, and his belief in peaceful liberal change crumbled. His political views began to shift. His brother's death was not in vain, but rather a clarion call for action. Vladimir would take up the revolutionary cause, but not with the same liberal ideals of gradual reform that had guided his father and brother. No, Lenin's path would be one of total upheaval, of revolution. In 1887, Lenin entered Kazan University to study law. He was an exceptional student, but his interests were already pulling him beyond academic work. Lenin was drawn to radical political groups, immersing himself in Marxist thought. Within months, his involvement with revolutionary circles brought him under the watchful eyes of the university authorities and the secret police, the Okhrana. Lenin, at just 17, was marked as a troublemaker. It didn't take long before the university expelled him, a crushing blow for most, but not for Lenin. His resolve only hardened. He returned to his studies independently and completed his law degree by 1891, though his future was already clear. Lenin would never settle into a quiet life as a lawyer. Instead, his time and energy would be devoted to revolution. As Lenin grew into adulthood, his obsession with revolutionary socialism became all-consuming. He devoured books on philosophy, socialist theory, and the mechanics of revolution, constantly seeking out ideas that could help him forge a path for Russia's future. His reading habits were insatiable, consuming works by Karl Marx, Nikolai Chernyshevsky, and other radical thinkers. Lenin admired Chernyshevsky so much that he later borrowed the title of his novel, What Is to Be Done, for one of his own most famous works. But Lenin was not just a theorist, he was a man of action. By the early 1890s he had formed an alliance with Julius Martov, a fellow Marxist and future leader of the Bolshevik faction. He also met Nadezhda Krupskaya, a fellow socialist and educator who would become his lifelong companion and wife. Together, they became a powerful duo in revolutionary circles. Yet, this life of rebellion carried risks, and Lenin was soon living under aliases and in disguise, moving from place to place to evade the secret police. In 1895, Lenin's luck ran out. He was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in exile in Siberia. The remote Siberian wilderness was a place designed to break the spirit of any revolutionary, but for Lenin, it was a time to reflect, write, and plan. Siberia only deepened his resolve. He emerged from exile more radical, more determined, and more committed to the cause than ever before. By 1900s, Lenin had entered a new phase of exile, this time in the cities of Western Europe. It was during this period that he adopted the name Lenin, likely inspired by the Lena River in Siberia. It was also during these years that Lenin's vision for revolution crystallized. In 1902 he published his groundbreaking work What Is to Be Done. Here Lenin laid out a blueprint for a socialist movement unlike anything Russia had seen before. He argued that the revolution would not be brought about by spontaneous uprisings or mass movements, but by a small, tightly knit group of professional revolutionaries, disciplined, focused, and entirely devoted to the cause. This vanguard would lead the workers and peasants in overthrowing the old order. For Lenin, compromise was unacceptable. His revolutionary party would be secretive and highly organized, with decisions made by an intellectual elite, not by the whims of the masses. This was the seed of what would later become the Bolshevik Party. Lenin, with his sharp mind and steely determination, was the perfect embodiment of this idea. He lived a Spartan life, with few comforts beyond his love for ice skating, chess, and Beethoven's music. While Lenin's radical ideas were gaining traction, the events of 1917 took him by surprise. The Russian Empire, weakened by World War I and the ineptitude of its rulers, was crumbling. In March 1917, Tsar Nicholas II abdicated, and the provisional government took power. But for Lenin, this was not the moment to celebrate. It was merely a stepping stone toward a true socialist revolution. In April 1917, with the assistance of the German government, Lenin returned to Russia. His journey, made in a sealed train across Europe, was a calculated move by the Germans, who saw Lenin as a tool to destabilize the provisional government. Upon his arrival at Finland Station in Petrograd, Lenin delivered his famous April theses. His message was clear: the revolution was far from over. Power needed to be transferred to the Soviets, workers' councils, and Russia needed to withdraw from the imperialist war. In October 1917, Lenin's vision became reality. The Bolsheviks, under his leadership, seized power in the October Revolution, establishing the world's first socialist state. Lenin, the young man who had once consoled his mother after his brother's execution, had now become the leader of a revolutionary movement that would reshape the world.